All right, so today we're diving into a really cool challenge. How do you take a basic project brief and turn it into a full-blown engineering design for a city's water system? It's a fascinating puzzle of numbers, research, and some serious problem solving.
So put yourself in this position, right? You get handed a map, it's got a few locations marked on it, and that's it. How in the world do you turn that into a water supply that works for an entire community? I mean, where do you even start?
Well, as you can probably guess, it's not as simple as just drawing lines on a map. It's a really methodical process. It moves from that initial concept to some deep research, and then finally to creating a detailed blueprint. Let's break down exactly how that all comes together.
Okay, so first things first. Before you can even think about pipes or pumps or anything else, you have to completely understand the mission. You've got to know what the core challenge is and, more importantly, what actually defines success in this project.
So here's the deal. The main task is to create a conceptual design, but you're starting with very, very little information. And you know what? That's just like the real world of engineering. You almost always start with a bunch of unknowns. Success here isn't just about getting the right answer. It's about making smart, justifiable assumptions and then backing every single one of them up with your own solid research.
And listen, this is absolutely key. The project brief makes it super clear just using the basic info they give you, that's not going to cut it. The best designs and, the best grades are going to come from the people who go out and find high-quality, relevant data to support every decision they make.
And yeah, the stakes are definitely high. Just look at this breakdown. The final report all by itself is worth a massive 50% of the entire project grade. It's proof that it's not just about doing the math, it's about being able to communicate your entire design process like a pro.
Okay, so once you've got the mission down, what's next? Well, now we get into what I call forecasting the thirst. Before you can build a single thing, you have to figure out exactly how much water this city is going to need.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because it's not just some simple per-person calculation. You've got these unique challenges, like figuring out irrigation for a golf course during its driest month. Or you have to literally invent a model for a stadium's halftime water rush based only on the crowd size. This is going to take some serious creative thinking.
So all that work, all those tricky calculations, they all boil down to one critical number, the design flow rate. This is the absolute peak, the most demand your system will ever face. It could be the busiest hour of the day, or it could be a major fire. And every single pipe in your network is going to be sized based on this one value.
And to get to that number, here are the tools you're given. These are specific multipliers you use to scale up your average daily water use into those peak scenarios. And look at that. The 3.25 multiplier for the max hour really shows you how much demand can spike during certain parts of the day. It's huge.
And then there's this little instruction, straight from the brief, and it is a big deal. Hand calculations are required. In this age of software and spreadsheets, the ability to show your work, step by step, by hand, is still a fundamental skill they're testing here.
Yeah, they could not be more clear about this. They want a clean, easy-to-read PDF of your manual work. Sure, you can use Excel to check your answers. In fact, you probably should, but you absolutely cannot submit that file. It's all about the process and clarity, not just the final number.
All right, we've figured out how much water we need. So now what? We move into phase 3, actually designing the network. This is where the numbers on the page start to become a virtual model of pipes and junctions, all built inside a specialized software called WaterGems.
And this isn't a one-and-done kind of thing. The whole process is what we call iterative. That means you lay out the pipes, you run a simulation, you check the pressures. Uh-oh, is the pressure too low somewhere? You might need a bigger pipe. Is it too high? Maybe you can get away with a smaller, cheaper one. You just keep repeating this loop, optimizing and tweaking until the whole system is dialed in for both performance and cost.
And as you're doing this balancing act, you've got some hard and fast rules you absolutely have to follow. During that peak demand, the pressure cannot drop below 240 kilopascals. But then, late at night when hardly anyone's using water, it can't go above 850, or you start risking damage to the pipes. It really is a delicate dance.
So we've designed for the peaks, but we also need to plan for them. And that brings us to section 4, sizing the reservoir. You can think of this as the system's battery, storing up water for when it's needed the most.
Think about it this way. You've got a spring, and it provides a nice, steady flow of water. But a city's water use is all over the place. It spikes in the morning when everyone's getting ready for work, and it spikes again in the evening. The reservoir's entire job is to bridge that gap. It stores the steady supply so it can release it during those peaks. So how do you figure out the right size? Well, it's done using a 1-hour time step model. You literally chart the water coming in from the spring versus the water going out to the city hour by hour for a full day. The biggest deficit you find in any given hour, that's what determines the minimum size your reservoir has to be.
Okay, the system is designed, the reservoir is sized, but you know what's coming next, right? It's time for the bottom line. Section 5 is all about counting the cost. Because let's be real, a brilliant design is pretty useless if nobody can afford to build it.
You're not just pulling numbers out of thin air. You're given a specific cost table to work from. And just look at this. The cost per meter for a pipe more than doubles when you go from a 300 to a 600 millimeter diameter. This is exactly why that optimization process we talked about is so critical. Every single meter of oversized pipe adds up, and it adds up fast.
But here's a little twist that I think is really interesting. The rules for calculating costs are totally different for pipes and reservoirs. For the pipes, you have to use only the sizes and costs provided. No guessing, no in-between sizes. But for the reservoir, you're actually expected to interpolate or extrapolate to find the precise cost for whatever volume you calculated.
And that brings us to the final, and maybe the most critical step of all, assembling the final blueprint. This is where all the research, all the calculations, and all the designs finally come together into one single professional report.
And honestly, this quote from the actual project brief just nails it. This isn't just another class project, it's a portfolio piece. It's a chance to create something that shows off your skill, your attention to detail, and your ability to communicate complex ideas. Basically, all the things a future employer would be dying to see.
So there you have it. The blueprint is done, the numbers check out, the design is solid. But that just leads to the next big question, doesn't it? What happens next? What are the real-world challenges, from funding and politics to construction nightmares, that turn a perfect plan like this into a reality that's actually in the ground?